I'll introduce the first speaker. The first speaker, David Guerrero, is a Manila-based writer and the creative chairman of BBDO Guerrero, the advertising and creative agency responsible for iconic campaigns and slogans, including the Department of Tourism's It's More Fun in the Philippines. He is the author of the You Have to Go Through a Lot of Crap to Get to Good Ideas book, published by Mil Flores Publishing, which won the Best Book on Humor, Sports, Lifestyle, and Business at the 41st National Book Awards. And because he has a lot of slides, please take it away. Start already. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause for David Guerrero.
Thank you so much. I'm here to tell you about my father, the Nolly, and me. For those who are uninitiated, the Nolly is the book of Jose Rizal, the national hero of the Philippines, author of two novels which sparked off the Philippine Revolution against Spain. The two books, Nolly was printed in Berlin, 1887, El Fili in Ghent in 1891. This is the place where the Nolly was printed. So the Manila Chronicle, back in the day, ran an article. In this building in East Berlin is where Rizal finished writing the Nolly in Feb 21, 1887, and here is where it was printed. So the novel, of which 2,000 copies were printed, this is the original form, this is the first edition. And for such a small circulation, it had a huge impact in the country in which it landed. It was a satire of Spanish rule. It poked merciless fun at the Spanish friars who were running the Philippines. And as my father wrote in his biography of Rizal, the friars could never have forgiven Rizal the sardonic portraits of Father Sibilla, the elegant Dominican quibbler, Father Damaso, the blustering, gluttonous peasant Franciscan, with a daughter doubly illegitimate, sacrilegious, and adulterous, or Father Salvi, the scheming and frustrated lecher, a cassocked peeping Tom. Rizal was only slightly kinder to his countrymen, and it is not only a tribute to his skill as a writer, but also proof that Filipino society has not changed much since his day. This is what my father wrote in that thing. Now, he was right in that they couldn't forgive Rizal, and he was put on trial for writing these two books and executed by firing squad in Manila, and this monument, which is the country's best-known landmark, now commemorates that spot where he was shot on 30th of December, 1896, a day that is marked every year in the country with a holiday. So who was my father? My father was Leon Maria Guerrero, 1915 to 1982. He was the biographer of Rizal, the first Filipino, Manila, 1961. Translated from Spanish to English, Rizal's two novels. And on his retirement in 1982 was only the third recipient of the Mabini Award, which is given for foreign service. He was only the third recipient of that. This is excerpts from his diplomatic career. He was in India, he was in Spain, he was also in London, just a couple of famous faces just to give you a sense of the world he lived in. And this is me, a little bit younger, my dad's office, and I am the literary trustee of Leon Maria Guerrero. I am also, as was said, the creative chairman of BBDO and an author. Right. So I produced this book about my dad for his 100th birth anniversary in 2015. Actually, it came out a little bit earlier, but it was this cover image which we selected became quite iconic, and I was a bit worried about it encouraging people to smoke, so I donated the proceeds of the book to the Philippine Cancer Society. But this was the book, which I think there are one or two copies available downstairs still. And just a little bit about the family. The family is not one of those landed haciendero families. We were poor fisher folk. At the outset, but in the 1860s, we suddenly produced according to this article, a brilliant array of savants and artists. There are scientists, there are doctors, there are lawyers. We're a professional family. My father attended the Ateneo, which is the same high school as Rizal. He was there, was still a Jesuit university, one of the leading ones in Manila. And he went into politics. He was a acting secretary of foreign affairs, advocating for greater independence for the Philippines from the US, advocating for the Philippines for the Filipinos, just as Asia should be for the Asians. This did not make him popular with the Americans at the time, and he was essentially forced into political exile in 1954 and became, I can do this, ambassador to London. So he threw all that energy he had in his politics and became this very young, very highly qualified ambassador. He was 39 years old, the youngest at the time, and was said by the New Statesman of London to give speeches so fresh, so sensible, and so free from conventional emptiness, they fully justify reprinting in pamphlet form. And his assessment was the job of a Philippine ambassador is somewhat different from an ambassador of more powerful older states. Our problem is not so much bad publicity, but no publicity at all. Our main difficulty is the appalling absence of any information about the Philippines. It has sometimes given me the feeling of disembodiment, the uneasy feeling that I was, after all, an elaborate fraud. It had been such a long time since I last saw Manila that perhaps it had ceased to exist. The Philippines had been annihilated in some secret nuclear experiment, and I was the ambassador of a country that was no longer on the map and may never have been there at all. This is how isolated he felt after not seeing any news from home. But as he was in London, he discovered the house that Rizal had stayed in when researching his work, and found it in a street in what was then a unfashionable working class neighborhood of London called Primrose Hill, which was a lodger. And the house, that they were so surprised to know that it had historical significance that they offered it to the Philippine government for £2,500. And the government considered it carefully and said, we don't really have the money right now to buy this. It's a shame because it's now in excess of 4 million, the houses in that street, which is also the street that, if you've seen the Paddington movies, is where Paddington Bear lives. Anyway, he did that, and later on, we have paid family pilgrimages to stand outside this house, and you can still do this, 37 Chalcot Crescent, if you're in London. See the house where Rizal lived, and the blue plaque that is there. That's me with my wife Angel, daughter Kimmy, and our son Leon is there. So he also got to work on the translation of the Noelle and the Philippine. And this is just to show you how it went in those days. Entirely analog. You type it out on a manual typewriter, and then you correct it with pen, and you type it out all over again, and maybe do that twice. So this is the way he worked. He worked in this very, very hands-on analog way. And the result was these two books. So this was the UK edition, published by Longmans in London. It had an illustration on the cover by an artist called David Medallia, who was at the time 19 years old and has since been gone on to greatness in the UK. It was significantly a new translation for modern readers, and we'll get onto that more later, but he was definitively going to try and make this more readable than previous editions. This was the US version. They changed the title to The Lost Eden, which he hated. And there was a foreword by James Michener, known for South Pacific, I think, and some other things. So they brought him in to sort of give some weight to this. So the books were well reviewed. This is in the Times of London, and 10th of August 1961. Senor, they called him Senor. They must have thought he was Spanish. Senor Guerrero has done a brilliant translation which makes available to a new generation a novel hitherto mainly known to students of Spanish literature and 19th century revolutionary movements. It was also reviewed in the New York Times. So New York Times, July 22. There have been various translations of the Noelle. The best known in English is by Charles Derbyshire, a Filipino writer and educator, George Bacobo, published another in English, which was a remarkable job. The present translation by L.M. Guerrero is, in the opinion of this reviewer, the best of them all. And so it goes on. There was the Saturday Review. Again, the first translation of Rizal's novel in the US for nearly 60 years. That is an event in itself, but even more eventful is the vitality of Guerrero's translation, which arms the old authenticity with a contemporary presence. Now, for the first time, action, humor, the passions are audible again, as they must have been for Rizal. So this is the reception that he had. And again, it was expanded on in the New York Times Book Review. That he not only succeeded in preserving the original flavor, he has shown a happy faculty for modernizing antiquated and obsolete terms. But this is very much, in the world of the 1960s, this was a very successful translation. This became the standard text in the Philippines, and it went around the world as well. So just as a little aside, when I was going through the papers, these two books were presented to Mrs. John F. Kennedy on Rizal Day, December 30, 1962, with these dedications by the ambassador in the US at that time. So I just thought it would be, honestly, that's a very gratuitous use of Jackie Kennedy's picture, but I just thought I'd put it in there. There's a real reason for that. And then in 1992, or 94, my father died in 1982. In 1990, Longmans had ceased publishing the book actively, and we were given back the worldwide rights. So the estate acquired the worldwide rights to the Noelle and Philly. And obviously I have no qualification for publishing a book whatsoever. I'm an advertising person, no clue. So I started giving the job of designing the cover to various art directors in the office, and this was the first one. And this one, we did 2 ads for this book at that time. The first one was the critics didn't shoot down the book, just the author. And then the second one, condemned by Franciscans, Dominicans, and Jesuits, is perfect for Christmas. And these 2 ads won Clio Awards, so we're kind of happy with those. And then there were more covers that followed. This cover was done by Budget Tan's brother, Brandy, and it had a 2-part Ibarra and then Simoon together, so it was a 2-in-1 edition of the book. And then Team Manila did a cover, and then, okay, now I need to bring you on to the next part of the story. So the next part of the story is, by 1998, a prominent American academic we've heard a lot about this week already, Ben Anderson, published a book called The Spectre of Comparisons, and within it is a 25-page essay that goes through very thoroughly the translation, and he was actually teaching himself Spanish, this guy, by using the original Rizal, my father's translation, and a dictionary, and going through line by line and sort of noticing all the divergences where there's some differences in the original text. And so this formed the basis of a very thorough analysis of the translation, and it's very much from the position of the present. So he was doing this in 1998. The books were written in 1961. So there's obviously a lot has changed in translation practice and theory in that time. And in the 60s, it was all about readability and making unfamiliar things familiar, whereas by the late 90s, it's much more about preserving the uniqueness of a culture and not changing it. So he argues, I think you can't. It's successfully that it falls short in various aspects in comparison to an ideal version that has yet to exist. Okay, so he's saying that literally it should be like this, but no one's yet done it. What a shame. And he makes the argument that it's the is kind of a nationalist scheme to make Rizal a safer, less dangerous kind of revolutionary. It also contains some personal conjectures about the translator, and that's what I found I needed to do something about. So, thanks to, sorry, I can't click, yeah. He said something about how perhaps it was because Leon Maria Guerrero's uncle, Bishop Cesar, he had an uncle as a bishop, who could have easily wandered into the pages of Noelle or Philly, encouraged the translator to undertake some bowdlerization and by demodernization, exclusion of the reader and delocalization, to distance Rizal Philippines as much as possible from the Philippines of his own time. So, which is an argument you can make, but not, I think, because of the uncle, because Bishop Cesar, who was the subject of a piece by Nick Joaquin, a prominent Filipino writer, pointed out that he was the one bishop in the Philippines who stood up against the church, against the banning of the Noelle and the Philly. So if you're going to pick a bishop to say, you know, he could have wandered into the pages of Noelle and Philly, it wouldn't be this guy, because he was the one guy who said, who refused to sign the banning of the Noelle and the Philly, and he did this well before the translation. And the other one, which I did take issue with, was that the description of the alcoholic anti-American diplomat Leon Maria Guerrero, right? So I'm thinking, this is, we're verging into the personal here, because there's no citation anywhere in the literature that can define him as an alcoholic. And I'm not sure whether alcoholic is worse than anti-American or and it's an odd combination, alcoholic, anti-American. So anyway, so he's an alcoholic, anti-American diplomat. And so I said, I'm going to send him an email. So I had an email exchange with Ben Anderson in 2014, in which, sorry, can I? Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, oops. So I said, this is an extract. My edition of your book does not contain any footnoted reference to the phrase Leon Maria Guerrero, the alcoholic anti-American diplomat. And the fact this description appears when his name is introduced gives it the appearance of a commonly held epitaph. So it looks like it's accepted, right? So as a public figure, his life was extensively documented, and there is no reference to alcoholism in any of the eulogies or obituaries at the time of his death. I'm happy to wait for this book to be found, but so he's saying he found this reference somewhere. But he replied, there are 3 writings of mine which talk about your father. The first was the attack on his translation of the Noelle, really my first serious text on Pinas, long and detailed. The second was my rushed short review in the London Review of Books, where you are right to say what I said about him was insulting. I agree. So I said, okay, it's good. This is my kind of objective achieved at this point. But there was also a third text of the book, Under 3 Flags, which came out long after the first and second. If you look at the index, you will see that there are 5 or 6 references to the first Filipino. All are positive. I learned a good deal from this book. So this is the other positive outcome. Is that the first Filipino, which is now in Anvil's catalog, looks like this, could now have a blurb that says, I learned a lot from this book. Benedict Anderson, 2014, right? So I'm going to suggest this to Sandra. And then subsequently, there's been a totally independent scholar doing a biography of my father called The Diplomat Scholar, which again takes an independent view of all this. This is done, published in Singapore and republished by the Ateneo in the Philippines. And then we produced an audiobook. So there's an audiobook with Richard E. Grant, the Academy Award nominated actor. So that's available on Audible, by the way. You can all get it on Audible. And we celebrated a centenary in 2015 with this logo. And because it's now an ebook, we were able to do a word cloud. So this is a Noelle word cloud. This is every word in the Noelle. And it's interesting. I mean, the big themes come out. And thinking of having this made into a T-shirt. Should I do that? kind of cool. So yeah, this is like every word, what we can do with technology. And then I will just say, this is the current edition of the Nolly. So Amber Thakampa, writing in 2015, still calls it the most contemporary, and some would say most English translation of the Nolly in Philly. So it continues in print. I think we value debate, we value discussion. I think there's always room for more translations. The fact is this one does exist, and it's here now, and it's a good one. One more. Oh yes, one more thing. In 2014, Sy-Quia magazine in the Philippines named Leon Maria Guerrero one of the greatest presidents we never had. So that was nice, and they picked the same image from the book cover. So that is it. That is my journey.
Thank
with
you.
the Nolly and my father.
So I'm going to introduce the next speaker, and she will introduce for us the other panelists on stage. Did you approve this before I read it? Yes? Or shall I skip to the middle? Okay, all right. Noelle Sy-Quia was born and baptized in 1946 in Malate Church, Manila. She is now 79 years old and retired, and she remains active in cultural and literary circles. Noelle is deeply rooted in Philippine history. She is the great-granddaughter of Maria Rizal, the sixth child of Francisco Mercado and Teodora Alonso, and elder sister of national hero Jose Rizal. Her maternal grandfather, Mauricio Rizal Cruz, Maria's eldest, fathered Caridad Arguelles Cruz, who married Pedro Michel de Champursin Sy-Quia. Oh, I did not ask you how to pronounce that. I'm sorry, okay. Noelle is their eldest daughter, and she is also a first cousin of Gemma Cruz Araneta through her maternal uncle, Ismael Arguelles Cruz. And she will introduce the rest.
Yes, well, she has already said a lot about me, so I will now introduce those people who are around me. I think, although it's not proper, I will introduce my eldest son, who's also named more or less like me. And then across is Angela. She was born here in Germany. She is the eldest daughter of Encarnacion Laurel. And your father? Volker Löwe. Not Löwe, right? Yes, Löwen. And also, I would like to introduce, she is from the Pasiano line, Alexa Jacinto Westenberger. These three are residents here in Germany. I have especially asked them to come because those from my generation are wanting to pass on the microphone and all other activities about the family to the next generation. So what do we want? I would be open to any questions from the public, what they would wish to know.
So we have time. I thought you were still going to give a presentation. So this panel is called Rizal and Remembrances. And this is an opportunity to talk to the descendants of Rizal through several lines that are here. So let me start. Anybody, raise your hands, please. And if you need translation, please signal to the staff because simultaneous translation is available. Okay, so any questions, please raise your hand, or I will call, like a teacher, people in the audience so you can avoid eye contact if you don't want to be called. But since you did not avoid, may I please call? She is an influential public figure in the Philippines because of her reels, Mighty Magulang. Ms. Mona, may I invite you please on stage? Yeah, just to ask a question.
No, I just wanted to ask a question of David about. I was not expecting so much like tea from this afternoon's presentation. But I would like to ask, were you ever able to talk to Mr. Benedict Anderson about, like, I understand that he wrote that about your father, but was there ever a retraction over and above the little apology email that he sent? How has there ever been a correction, or has there been derivative work that kind of raised up the same issues that he did?
Well, I think the short answer is no, because this came. I was kind of dimly aware of this going on, but obviously I have my own battles to fight, and this is not something I really intended to get involved with. But when I did get around to reading it, and I did think, that's when I got hold of his email address and said, then I wrote to him. And then, very sadly, he died soon afterwards. I mean, he died like the next year. So I never got to continue that correspondence or meet him. So, no, because it all happened after he died. So my father died in 82, so this happened at least 15, 16 years afterwards. So it would have been interesting if they had both been around, but essentially, I mean, he's such a prominent and respected academic in my sense that all those views have gone unchallenged, as far as I can tell. There's no actual, I don't think anyone's taken him up on it. And I think and I'm not really challenging the right to, to an opinion. It's more just where there's factual errors. We just wanted to correct the factual errors. And I think there were some things, some of the conjectures, like because he had a bishop as an uncle, maybe he took it easy on the priests in the novel, or because he was once served on the International Sugar Council, he's going to be sympathetic to the hacienderos. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all, because neither of those things are true. So some of those things needed pointing out. But honestly, I know so many friends of his. I mean, a lot of my literary friends are either devotees, acolytes, or in some cases, in Amber's case, a teacher of Anderson. So I mean, all the people I know in literature are all kind of on his side in a sense. And I don't want to take sides on this, but it is just what it is. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Leloy has a question, so please pass him the mic. And there's also another question. But before that, is it okay, Leloy, before you ask your question? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. There is something he mentioned about the relative who was a cardinal. I mean, a bishop. He was a bishop. And that he was very much promoting both novels, which I said the other day, that both novels had been included in the Vatican list of prohibited books. And which is why that law that obligated schools and universities in the Philippines to include study of the Rizal novels, there was an exclusion for Catholic schools. And I said that next year it's the 70th anniversary of that law. And it turns out Pope Paul VI abolished the index in 1966. So next year it's the 60th anniversary of that event too. You see? So I have to thank your uncle or your ancestor, whoever, for always being against the fact that these two novels were in the index.
Before I hear the question before we ask Leloy to ask his questions, may I ask the three next generation Rizal descendants, when you listen to these issues about the translation and the law, is this something you grew up hearing about? Is this something you feel connected to? What is, because you might be the next ones in line to in the conferences 10 years, 20 years from now. Can you introduce yourselves and your lives as Rizal descendants?
Been volunteered. Okay. Well, first of all, I always feel an ambivalence. I'm not sitting in this chair on merit.
Well, there's
Number
no
one.
choice, right?
Right. And so I always felt this ambivalence of, well, I had nothing to do with this. And of course, there's a privilege that comes with it. And in fact, just as you were asking the question, it's a great question because there are so many ways in which Rizal is either being taken or used or interpreted. And what comes to me is when you hear of the ripples beyond what we heard within the family, it actually imposes on me a sense of obligation to broaden my knowledge and to hold it. So it actually feels like I'm acquiring an obligation. Yeah.
Because once you hear Leloy's question, you're going to learn something new about this debate with Ben Anderson, I can tell. Am I right?
Fantastic.
Yeah, no.
Quickly, I'd like to buy you a drink, David, because I just taught a class on Anderson. We read maybe 50% plus of all of his major works, and my conclusion was he was unfair to your father because Anderson hated bureaucrats and liberals. And of course, Leon Marie, I'm a historian of liberalism. He was one of the greatest liberals the Philippines has ever produced and one of the greatest bureaucrats. And I think that explains it. And I'm sorry that happened, but it's just kind of very clear if you read his oeuvre that was his thing.
And it's important for you to hear these things, right? But yes, how about you? Do you have an answer as well? Or you want to respond?
No,
Yes.
first of all, thank you for that. I mean, again, I really have stayed away from this. I don't want it to be a personal thing at all. And I felt like I don't think Anderson's writings have been analyzed enough in the way that you talk about. And I'm not sure, and it feels like it should be someone else's job to do that, to sort of just to examine some issues around, again, the shift in translation theory, the shift in, this whole idea of it's not as good as an ideal book, which doesn't exist yet, and all this kind of stuff. It just feels like, there's so much to admire in his scholarship, but there's also this, no one's perfect, and I think he lost the plot a little bit on some of this stuff, so that's it.
And not that my opinion matters, but when I learned Spanish and read Noli in Spanish, then I read your father's translation. I enjoyed the wit, the flow, the humor, the cadence. And I don't find that in the new official translations that I'm sometimes asked to read in events like this. Something was lost, and it's a rhythm that you feel when your tongue has to flow a certain way. And not to defend, and not that my opinion matters. Yeah.
But the other funny thing is, talk to most people now, and they're being taught the Noli in Tagalog, right? So who knows who's checking those translations? I'm not sure who's actually looking at those either, right?
But Angela and Alexa, I haven't forgotten about you yet. You may opt to answer now or later after the next question. So I do want to hear the next generation. It's practice for 2035. Okay, go ahead.
Is it on?
Yeah.
So I was born in Germany, and I went to the Philippines the first time in my 30s, beginning 32. I was 32 years old. So all this about the translation of the two books is new for me. Yeah, I'm learning a lot being here and hearing all these discussions. It's very interesting. Yeah, that's all for the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I think it's a beautiful thing that many people have produced, so many translations, and I think just the underlying message is very beautiful. So in a time where staying silent was safer, Jose Rizal used words because the pen was essentially mightier than the sword in his heart. So words, he proved that words could ignite multiple fires that fear could never suppress. And so I think in this day and age, there are many ways to look at different literary texts and translate it in a way that it speaks to you. So I think it's such a great thing to have. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question from this side. Yes, it's Dorian.
Hello. This is a question for the Rizal family descendants. First, I just wanted to express a tremendous gratitude for you being here and coming and talking with us. It really, really is a pleasure and an honor. Rizal's work is deeply meaningful for Filipinos. And the other evening, I had the pleasure of accompanying Miss Noelle to the Instituto Cervantes, where she read the Ultimo Adios. And what was amazing about the reading is there was such emotion in the reading. And what that my question is about Rizal's work, even though it's written so long ago, is so contemporary. He's addressing these issues that you just talked about that we're dealing with today. So I'm just really interested to hear in your families about how you talked about his work, or did it come up, or did his poetry come up, or his books, or how did that discussion take place in your family, and what did you talk about? Anything you wanted to share? Thank you.
So every Sunday, when we would visit my grandfather, he would make us memorize one stanza of Mi Ultimo Adios. And we couldn't eat lunch until we performed. So that's my story.
Well, I have no tradition in all these stories. I'm sorry, because my mother went back to the Philippines when I was a small kid. So I'm just learning the last years about all my family stories, and for me, it's really a big thing. And I was really flashed when I read the two books of José Rizal, because I think it's very actual, and I also. Yes, I was very honored to be I am very honored to be a descendant of him.
What language did you read them in?
English, and now in German.
David, you're next. You will share too. I'm sorry, no. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, you're right. But no.
Your honoris causa.
As the son of Leon Maria Guerrero, how did he do the Rizal stories in your home? Did you have any?
No, I mean that's probably not. And I think but I kind of just absorbed it by osmosis, and I did get the sense of. I mean, I think this is it. I mean, there was a lot of reverence, obviously, and pride in his work that I was fully aware of, and I, on my own volition, read the books and the biography.
But you never talked about Rizal at home.
We talked about other stuff. I don't know, but I wasn't of the age. I mean, he died when I was 21, so I was probably not yet ready to do it. And I think even it's taken me ages to get round to thinking about it and talking about it, because you don't want to be in the shadow of your father when you're younger. I had to wait till I get pretty old to start working on this, because it's too close. You know what I mean? So I think you need some distance. You also need to feel justified yourself in doing something. You need to feel like you're making a contribution. So I think I've done a lot of the stuff I've done just to try to feel useful about it, and it's not. And not kind of just, and that's why I'm not about defending everything he's done at all costs. And I don't want to be that kind of executor or trustee. I mean, I've only just thought of this or realized that I am the trustee. It's an unpaid role. It's unfortunate. So I still have to have a day job. but I think there is a real responsibility that comes with it. And the responsibility is both to preserve and protect, but also to be open to genuine debate and genuine, recognition that times are changing. But you want the work to be seen in its context, and you want the work to be preserved for the future. I mean, these are the things. You want to find more ways to make it accessible to more people, which is why we've embraced the e-books, the Audible, and all that sort of thing, just to make sure that more people can get to it. Because it's daunting now. People don't like to read books, and you tell them they've got to read. I know it's hard to say in Frankfurt Book Fair, but it's like 300-page Victorian era novel. It's a mountain for most people. So an audiobook sometimes easier for a lot of people. Adaptations, so I think this is what the future brings. I think is about how do we engage with modern technology with these timeless stories.
Noelle?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Dorian. I'll offer two little vignettes. Okay, one of them is that I received indirectly from my mother, which is when my grandmother recited the Ultimo Adios, she couldn't get past the first stanza without breaking down in tears. So there's the intensely emotional proximity of it. And the other intimate detail is that how my grandmother would tell me how the oil lamp in which the Ultimo Adios was smuggled out, that it was my great-great-grandfather who carried the oil lamp. So it's little details like that that don't make it into the record, which are very precious to me, certainly. But then I want to add, and actually there's another one, which is something intimate happening within the family that then is taken as an interpretation of something. And that was my grandmother's brother, my great-uncle, Jose Cruz, becoming a Jesuit. And that was taken as interpretation of it being a reconciliation of the Rizal family with the church. So that was a lovely detail as well, of something very personal reverberating outside. The last thing is actually connecting with what Alexa said, being made to learn part of the Ultimo Adios, and what you said, right? Because in many ways, every country has an author who is used to torture school children. Shakespeare in the UK, right? The Portuguese have got their own, in Spain it's Cervantes, or Calderón de la Barca, or Lope de Vega. And my concern is how we do turn off the torture and ramp up the joy on that. Yeah.
Thank you, Dorian, for the question, and thank you for the lovely answers. Yes, please. A microphone for the back.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Guerrero family and Cruz, Rizal, Mercado family were also connected in a way. Carmen Guerrero Nakpil, Maria Guerrero Nakpil, Carmen Lucia Guerrero Nakpil, is the sister of Leon Maria Guerrero. Correct me if I'm wrong, Noelle. And she married Ariston Cruz, who is the younger brother of Caridad. So, were there other stories between the families that were shared?
The other stories within the families, of course, there was a lot of relations with them. I remember going quite often to your grandparents' house because of Gemma and Toto, her brother. So there was quite a relation. I mean, you never got to know them, but I would address them the same way the others would address them, which was Oyay and Oyoy, whenever we went to the house in Donada. And well, my mother was saying, had visited them a lot. And it's this intermarriage a lot. And then, for example, we would always be sharing, going to each other's houses for overnight sleep. We would all take turns. That's how we were interrelated.
Question? Yes, please. Microphone to the front, please.
All right, full disclosure, I am David Guerrero's daughter. But are you, this is just more of the Rizal descendants. Are you aware of his influence in Indonesia, for example? Are you aware of, for example, some of the earliest translations of the Noli and Fili were in Bahasa, and how the name Jose Rizal is one word. It's actually a common name in Indonesia relatively. So I was wondering if you guys were aware of that and if you had any sort of thoughts about it.
Wow. I know that Encarnacion, that's the sister of Mauricio, I know that one of her grandchildren worked and lived in Indonesia because her husband was working there. but in the few times we have met during family reunion, she has not mentioned it. So I'm afraid I can't tell you about this.
See, you've just enlarged the area of my study and catching up. Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Yes, yes, from that side. This stage is now requiring some flexibility. Thank you.
Exercise is good. Good afternoon, everyone. My question really is for the Rizal descendants. At what age did the family like introduce you to Jose Rizal and his body of work? And what was your reaction and how has it impacted your lives so far?
Yes, as I already said, well, I was 12 years old when I heard about this the first time. My mother told me when she came to Germany for visit, and I was always a very artistic child, and she told me, yes, it's in the genes. So today I'm a professional artist, and there's something very funny just happening right now. I'm doing the Wilhelm Tell in Switzerland, a theater play production, and the whole production was very surprised when I told them that my great-granduncle just made how to say, a translation from German to Tagalog. So yeah, this is my story.
Thank you for your question. I've been introduced to him my whole life, and so it hasn't affected me in a way that I am proud to be related, but I also am very aware I didn't do anything on my part. So, but I can always just like I'm very aware to try to translate his values like family, nationalism into my everyday life. So that's how I relive his legacy in a personal way.
So I can tell you exactly the moment it happened. No, I was 11 years old and I was visiting the Philippines and I was in the car with my grandmother and the car was driving past Luneta Park, past the statue. And my mother just whispered to me, do you happen to know you're related to this guy? I went, what? And from there, my awareness grew. But yeah, I still remember very, very clearly when it happened.
I'm surprised. That sounds rather late.
Yes.
Because the rest of the Filipino people get it at 5.
Yeah. See, tortured with it early.
Yes? Question?
I have a question for Noelle. So I am a genealogist. I've done the Rizal family tree quite a bit. And what I know of, like in the Philippine general public, a lot of people have a lot of stories about extramarital affairs which would connect them to Rizal. So, yes, so I am the half, my ancestor was a half brother of Rizal because of an extramarital affair of Francisco. So, is there any gatekeeper or official historian of the family that keeps track of the claims of ancestry?
Well, I'm not aware of that, principally because I don't live in the Philippines. But during one reunion, we cornered the descendants of Saturnina, saying Saturnina and Doña Teodora left Calamba for a couple of months and came back with a child. They denied it, and they would not even speak about it, and they even threatened to leave that reunion. So we have said, okay, we'll let it pass. So there's nothing I can say about that. I'm sorry.
So, as an FYI, some people are actually using it for politics. Like we are descendants of, or we are related to the Rizal family, and they are using it in local politics.
What
So,
I do know is that I believe at a certain point, Pasiano allowed some people to use the family name Rizal.
But wasn't Pasiano the one who did not change his name to Rizal and kept Mercado?
I don't know, that's something you will have to answer.
The poor girl just has the blood running in her veins,
Yeah,
and now
we-
it's, the transference of knowledge is assumed.
And what we know of Pasiano was he was the one who was almost he refused to speak Spanish. He was the one who kept speaking in Tagalog after his brother was executed. So he was so nationalistic to the point that he rejected all foreign influences. So we were just saying, I wonder what he would say if he knew that you lived here. But that was a different generation, of course.
The
Thank you.
only story I know about Pasiano and sort of Spanish or Spaniards is that some Spaniard or other picked over the fence into his property one day, and he told some manservant to say, send him away quickly. And then that man, sort of when he found out whose house it was, said, oh, okay, I understand. That's the only story I know.
Because the Rizals lost their land
Well,
on or about.
it was never their land. They were working for the Dominicans. They had to leave because the Dominicans kept raising the canon of what they had to pay. But it might interest. I've just remembered one story my mother used to say. It was when Maria was still a small child. They were affluent enough to have a very tall and very dark-skinned doorman who must have come with one of the galleons. He was the doorman, and Maria would be scared of him to death because he was apparently so tall and huge. She was always afraid of him. That's one story that just came into my mind.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Maybe two questions when time is running out. Make it fast. Please go ahead. Yes.
Oh, that's
So I have a question about the family as well.
Lucia's.
I am doing research. I'm a Belgian doing research since 31 years about Rizal. I met a lot of Rizal family members in the Philippines. Somewhere I wrote that Soledad was not a child of Theodora, but that Soledad was a child of Narcissa. Saturnina. Is there somewhere a connection? Are you aware of that? Is that true? Is that not true, or whatever?
That was what I told before, that when we cornered the Saturnina descendants, and they refused outright. Please permit me to present to everybody the most knowledgeable Rizalista in Europe, Mr. Lucien Spitael. He has a collection of over 400 books. In 2022, I came upon on my news feed that a professor in Heidelberg had just published a book, something like Rizal, the Slabans. So I quickly sent him an email, and he answered back, I already have it. Not new news for me. So, and when, for example, I think it was in Prague, or it might have been in Leitmeritz, Litomerice nowadays, they found some articles in the basement of a museum, and on the box they must have said it's from the Philippines. So they announced this, and who goes running the first amongst everybody? Mr. Spitael.
Well, this was in Berlin, at Ethnological Museum, where I found in 2009, I found a letter from Rizal sent from London in 1888 to Dr. Bastian in Berlin, and he sent 21 objects over there. So in 2009, I was aware of that letter, contacted the museum. All objects were stored. I sent a message, can I come to Berlin and see them? So I saw them, and they are in very, very, very good condition.
Yes.
From the 21 objects, people say these are objects from Rizal. That's not true, because he listed the 21 objects, and for one object, he wrote between brackets in German, I know the German language, es gehörte mir. Es gehörte mir means, it is mine. That was his salakot. There's also a barong. It didn't belong to Rizal. And Rizal didn't bring it to Berlin when he was there in 1887, but he sent it from London in 1888.
Yes.
That's what I know.
Yes, now that he has mentioned these objects in Berlin, last year I met Cristina Juan, who has been cataloging all Filipino artifacts in all museums in Europe. And I believe 2026 there will be a lot of exhibitions of all these Filipino articles that have been found. I also want to let the public know that in 1887, Dr. Rizal addressed the Ethnological Society in Berlin, and his speech was about the rhythm of Tagalog poetry. And which it was because of and he gave that speech, he gave that talk in German. So when news came to Europe that he had been executed, that society stood up for a minute of silence in his honor.
And with that, I was asked to wrap up this panel. If there are burning questions, please run towards the family as soon as I close this. But let me close this with this idea. Citizenship, there are two schools of thought, jus sanguinis by blood or jus soli by land. We have here on stage, except for David, people in whose veins run the bloodline of Jose Rizal. But it is David who is based in Manila, and that's the jus soli part. If you haven't been to Dapitan, where Rizal was exiled, the trees he planted are still there. And for the people who live there, I tie this to the panel before this. They believe that the spiritual substance of power animates the trees and the land and the rocks. His spirit lives on in the land and in the plants. Every one of us can imagine a connection to Rizal. Some of us consider him the father of our nation, and we are all his children by blood, by land, and by imagination. And with that, I end this panel. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.